Picture a country house in the English countryside, roll of green hills, a long gravel drive lined with elms, a front door wide enough to drive a carriage through, 12 bedrooms, a library, a billiards room, a dining room that seats 30, candlelight glinting off silver plate, a cellar with 400 bottles of the finest port wine in England. Now picture the man who owns all of it. He is 43 years old. He weighs somewhere in the region of 17 stone, which is, for those of you who don't speak in Old English measurements, about 238 pounds. His face is the colour of a cooked lobster, and approximately the same texture around the nose. His wig is powdered white and sits slightly crooked because his valet has not yet had the courage to point this out. His waistcoat strains at every button like a bag of flour someone has sat on. His feet, and this is the important part, his feet are wrapped in more cloth than a mummy in the British Museum. That's you tonight. Not the poor apprentice, not the starving weaver, not the orphaned chimney sweep or the frightened sailor 2 days out of port with no idea which ocean he's in. Tonight you are, by every measurable standard of Georgian England, a success. You own property, you have an income, you have servants, plural, whose entire purpose is to make your life more comfortable. You have a seat in the county magistrate's court, a pew in the parish church with your family name carved into the wood, and an invitation to every dinner of consequence within 30 miles. You've achieved everything a man of your time and place was supposed to achieve. And right now, at 3 o'clock in the morning, on a Tuesday in November, in the year 1758, you are lying in the dark with tears streaming silently down your face, because your left foot feels like someone has driven a hot nail through the big toe and is twisting it, slowly, with something that enjoys the work. This is gout, and you've had it for 6 years. So, I make these history stories, and some of you are probably here hoping for a nice relaxing trip through the past. Something soothing, the smell of old books, the sound of a fire, maybe a nice walk through the streets of London. Instead, I'm going to spend the next few hours getting you intimately acquainted with uric acid crystals in the metatarsal joint, the smell of mercurial ointment, and exactly what a Georgian physician's idea of helpful treatment looks like. Either way, get comfortable. Here we go. Your eyes open to darkness. Not the darkness of modern rooms, the thin, manageable dark that has a glow under the door and a red standby light somewhere, and the faint orange wash of street lamps through curtains. This is the darkness of 1758. Total, absolute. The darkness before electricity was even a theoretical concept held by anyone except a man in Philadelphia with a kite and a death wish. For a half second, you don't know what's woken you. Then it hits you. Not the smell. Not this time. No. This time it hits you first in the foot. In the joint. The specific joint. The metatarsal joint of the left foot's big toe, which is currently wrapped in 3 layers of flannel and elevated on a bolster pillow, and is somehow, impossibly, still the single most agonizing thing you've ever experienced in 43 years of living. Gout doesn't build up slowly. That's what people who don't have it don't understand. It doesn't throb in a way you can breathe through or work around. It arrives like a siege, like the body's own immune system has declared war on a single point in your foot and is prosecuting that war with the enthusiasm and total disregard for collateral damage of any good 18th century general. What is actually happening inside your toe right now, though you don't know this because the word uric acid will not enter the medical vocabulary for another 70 years, is this: the blood. The rich, port-stained, venison-saturated blood that has been circulating through your body for 2 decades of excellent dinners and magnificent wines, and absolutely no exercise more strenuous than descending a staircase. That blood has been depositing tiny crystals, sharp crystals like microscopic shards of glass, and they have been collecting in the joint of your big toe, in the space between the bones, in the synovial fluid that is supposed to make movement smooth. And now, in the particular cold of a November night, those crystals have shifted. The pain is not like a burn, it is not like a cut, it is in a category by itself. The kind of pain that makes respectable men weep, the kind that has brought kings to begging. Henry VIII had it, so did William Pitt, so did Benjamin Franklin, who had the particular misfortune of experiencing his worst attacks in Paris, where the social expectations around suffering were even more demanding than in London. It is called the disease of kings. Right now you would happily give the disease back. You clench your jaw so hard you can feel your teeth creak. You do not call out for your man. Not yet. There is a pride involved, even at 3 a.m, even alone in a dark bedroom, even with tears that have nothing to do with emotion running sideways across your face and into your ear. A Georgian gentleman does not cry for help at 3 a.m. unless there is actual fire. So you lie there and wait. The darkness does nothing to help. The room smells of several things. Of the fire that burned down to embers hours ago and is now just a faint tobacco and wood ash ghost of warmth. Of the beeswax candles that your man snuffed before leaving. Of the pomade in the pillow from your wig, laid on the stand beside the bed. Of the flannel around your foot. Flannel and the particular medicinal smell of the camphor that was applied last night, at your doctor's instruction. Because camphor is what Georgian medicine has to offer gout, along with hope and a mild suggestion that you might try drinking slightly less port. You have not tried drinking slightly less port. Your man's name is Hewson. He's been with you for 11 years. He knows exactly where the laudanum is kept. He knows how to prepare it, and in what quantity, and how to dilute it in a small glass of warm water, and bring it to you on the small tray, without making any noise that might suggest he is aware of the spectacle that is his employer, lying in the dark, crying. But you do not call for Hewson yet. You are doing the calculation. The gout sufferer's calculation. A very specific mental arithmetic that has nothing to do with money or business, and everything to do with pain. Is this an 8, or is it a 9? If it is an 8, there is a certain kind of stubborn endurance that can carry you through until dawn, when Hewson will appear anyway with warm water and the morning preparations, and you can deal with it then. Officially, in a dignified way, with proper management. If it is a 9, or, God forbid, climbing toward a 10, there is no dignity available. There is only the laudanum. You wait to find out which it is. The joint pulses. The crystals grind against each other, against the synovial membrane, against the soft tissue that has no defense against what is happening inside it. The pain comes in waves, the way bad seas come in waves. A crest, a terrible crest, then a moment that is not relief exactly, but is the valley between one wave and the next, then the crest again. You breathe through your nose, out through your mouth. This was advice from Dr. Chalmers, your physician, a man of great personal confidence and somewhat more variable results, who has been treating your gout for 4 years, and who charges 3 guineas a visit, and who is, you have come to believe, completely making it up as he goes. but the breathing helps. Marginally. You wait. 8 or 9. It crests again. Your hand finds the bedpost in the dark, not because you need to grip it, but because having something to grip makes the not gripping it feel like a choice. 9. Hewson, you say. Your voice comes out steadier than you expected. There is a long pause. Then, from the far end of the corridor, through the thick door and the dark intervening hallway, and the smaller door to the room where Hewson sleeps in the particular, light-sleeping vigilance of a servant who knows his employer's patterns, you hear movement. A long pause is not laziness. You know this. Hewson has, in the 11 years of his service to you, never been lazy. The pause is the time it takes a man who's been asleep for 4 hours to wake completely, locate his stockings, locate his shoes, light a taper from the banked coals in his own small fireplace, and compose himself into the particular state of alert, but not obvious concern, that distinguishes a good personal servant from a mediocre one. The door opens, candlelight fills the threshold. Hewson is 41 years old, built lean, and spare in the way that men who eat less than their employers tend to be built lean and spare. His face is calm, not artificially calm, actually calm. Either Hewson has nerves of absolute iron, or he has accepted somewhere in the years of service that his employer's medical crises are simply part of the landscape like weather. Sir? The foot. Yes, sir. He knows what that means. He moves to the cabinet by the fireplace, the second drawer, the brown glass bottle with the paper label. He pours the correct amount without you having to specify. 20 drops into a small glass. Warm water from the covered pitcher that sits on the hearth. A brief swirl, and he crosses the room with it on the small silver tray and stands at your bedside. His hands are very steady. You reach for the glass, and your own hand is shaking slightly. Not badly. Just enough to be noticeable, if one were inclined to notice. Hewson is not currently inclined to notice. You drink. Laudanum. Opium dissolved in alcohol. It has been a feature of European medicine for a century and a half, and it will remain a feature for another century more. Your great-grandchildren will still be taking it for everything from toothache to melancholy. Your great-great-grandchildren will eventually figure out what a catastrophic idea that was. But tonight, in this moment, as the warmth spreads from your stomach outward, as the sharp edges of the pain begin, not to disappear exactly, but to recede slightly, to become something you're observing from a slightly greater distance. You do not care about your great-great-grandchildren. Hewson adjusts the bolster pillow under your foot without being asked. His hands are very gentle. This is a skill. The ability to move a limb in agony without inflicting additional agony requires either an instinct for it or years of practice, and Hewson has both. Better, sir. Getting there. He replaces the tray on the cabinet, checks the fire. It is properly banked, just throwing enough heat to take the worst edge off the room without overwarming, and turns, waiting. That's all, Hewson. Sir? He takes 2 steps toward the door and stops. I'll leave a candle. Yes, thank you. He leaves it on the table beside the bed and closes the door softly enough that you cannot hear the latch. You lie in the candlelight. The laudanum is working. It works quickly in someone who takes it regularly. Your body has learned its chemistry, the way your body has learned the particular chair that is easiest to get out of, and the particular time of day when the foot is least troublesome, and the exact angle at which a fire has to be built before the smoke goes up the chimney rather than into the room. Your body has had 20 years to learn these things. 20 years of management. You are, in the parlance of your time and class, a gentleman of constitution, which means you are sick and have been sick and will be sick in ways that require constant negotiation. But you manage. You cope. You appear at the dinners and the assemblies and the quarterly meetings of the county bench, and you hold up your end of the conversation, and you wear the pain under your clothes the way you wear your waistcoat, as a garment, not a spectacle. This is what is expected of you. You close your eyes. The pain is down to a 7. The laudanum has done that much. 7 is livable. 7, you have learned, is a baseline. You go back to sleep somewhere around 4, while the candle burns down and the house creaks around you in the November wind, and outside the frost is settling on the fields and the hedgerows with a particular quiet efficiency of cold, and everything is perfectly, absolutely still. The morning begins with the body's full accounting. You knew this would happen. You know it every morning. Still, every morning it is slightly worse than you remembered from yesterday. Here is what is working. Your mind. Your mind is quite sharp. The mind of a man who reads Latin, who manages an estate, who has formed opinions on parliamentary reform and the question of the American colonies and the proper aging of a Douro Valley wine. Your mind, unclouded by anything except the residue of last night's laudanum, a faint, grey fog that will burn off within an hour, is functioning exactly as it should. Here is what is not working. Everything below the mind. Let us start at the top and proceed downward, because this is going to take a while. Your head. Your head is fine, except for the wig, which Houston will fit shortly, which sits slightly too warm and slightly too tight because you have it on the best authority that a somewhat larger wig was ordered last spring and has not arrived yet, and the current wig is from 2 years ago, when your head was apparently smaller. This is not an emergency. This is an inconvenience. Your neck. Your neck is stiff in the way that 43-year-old necks are stiff when the man attached to them has slept in the wrong position. This will ease with movement, or it won't. Either way, it is not the primary concern. Your shoulders. Your shoulders are carrying a good deal of excess weight that they were not designed to carry, and they know it. They register their complaint silently, with a dull ache that is present but not demanding, like a creditor who has decided to be patient for now. Your chest. Here is where things become more interesting. Your chest is doing something it has been doing with increasing regularity for the last 3 years. A tightness, not painful, not like the foot, not like that, but there. A heaviness in the upper left quadrant when you breathe too deeply, or when you climb stairs, or when you exert yourself in any way beyond the considerable effort of existing. Dr. Chalmers calls this an excess of phlegmatic humour pressing upon the lungs. He has a theory about the humours that he deploys with great confidence, and which you have recently begun to suspect may be incorrect in its foundational premises. But you are not a physician. You are a country gentleman with a library, and the library does not contain any alternative. So chest. Noted. Moving on. Your stomach. Your stomach is a complicated organ with complicated opinions, and it expresses them often. 20 years of the kind of eating that Georgian country life produces, the heavy suppers, the long dinners with their 5 removes, the bread and fat breakfasts, the port that follows the port that follows the port, have produced a stomach of strong character and strong opinions. It is currently making itself known with a low churning unease that is either the beginnings of proper hunger or the aftermath of last night's cold pheasant? Hard to tell. You will not know until you try to eat something. Your legs are functional. They are thick. They are dense with the particular weight of a man who has ridden horses but not walked much, who sits more than he stands, who has a natural build that, with the assistance of 20 years of excellent nutrition, has become something that requires 2 men to help into a carriage on cold mornings. But they work. They carry you. They have not yet failed at that, which is something. And finally, your feet. Your left foot in particular, which is still wrapped in 3 layers of flannel, which is still tender to the air, to the pressure of the sheets, to the thought of putting it on the floor, which is at this moment hovering somewhere between a 6 and a 7 on the scale you have developed, because the scale you have developed is the only medical instrument available that accurately measures this particular thing. Houston knocks at exactly 7:30. He enters with warm water, a towel, and your morning small clothes draped over his forearm with the particular precision of a man who has folded those small clothes 1,000 times and has developed opinions about how it should be done. Morning, sir. Quite cold. Frost on the north garden. The foot, you tell him, before anything. He sets down the water basin and goes to the flannel wrapping with his careful hands. This part, the unwrapping, the first contact of cool air with the inflamed joint, this part is its own specific category of sensation. Not pain exactly, more the anticipation of pain, mixed with relief, mixed with the strange vulnerability of a limb that has been wrapped so long it has forgotten it is a limb. He unwraps the first layer, the second, the third. The foot is revealed. It is in the morning light that comes sideways through the gap in the curtains, not a pretty object. The joint is swollen, visibly, dramatically swollen, the kind of swelling that tells a story without words. The skin around it is tight and red and shiny, drawn thin over the inflammation below. The colour is wrong. Too dark at the centre, too pale at the edges. You don't look at it for long. The camphor, you say. Yes, sir. Houston applies it with a cloth, working in the gentle circular motions that he has perfected over years of practice. The camphor smells sharp and medicinal and faintly animal. It does approximately nothing for the actual inflammation. But it has been prescribed by Dr. Chalmers, and until Dr. Chalmers prescribes something else, camphor is what you have. The rewrapping is a process, 3 layers, a special boot, if you can call it a boot. It is more of an architectural structure around the foot, padded and laced and built high around the ankle, that Houston laced onto you for the first time 4 years ago, and which has become, along with the silver-topped cane that waits by the bedroom door, one of the external signs of your condition. The signs that people politely don't mention, the signs that they notice immediately and never discuss. Getting upright takes a moment. Not a brief moment. A genuine, considerable moment in which you plant the right foot, grip the bedpost with one hand and Houston's offered forearm with the other, and raise yourself from lying to sitting to standing in stages that would look, to an outside observer, like a structure being assembled. The left foot touches the floor. You breathe through it. The foot accepts the weight, protests, but accepts. You are standing. Excellent, you say, to no one in particular. The morning toilet of a Georgian gentleman of means and condition is not a simple operation. You need to understand what we're working with here. Bathing, as a concept, exists. There are bathtubs. There is hot water. These things are not unknown. But regular full-body bathing in 1758 is not the daily routine it will eventually become. It is more of a periodic event, something that happens perhaps monthly, or when circumstances make it seem particularly necessary, and which involves the heating of substantial amounts of water and the participation of multiple servants and the commitment of considerable time. For a man in your condition, a man for whom every movement is a small negotiation with the body, bathing is a project, something that requires advanced planning. What happens every morning is ablutions. The face, washed with the warm water from the basin. The hands, the armpits, addressed with a damp cloth and a liberal application of Hungary water. A perfume blend of rosemary and citrus and alcohol, which both masks the smell of a body that has been inside its own clothes for most of the past 24 hours and leaves the skin feeling briefly human. Hungary water. Your dressing table has 3 bottles of it. This is not vanity, or rather, it is vanity performing the function of hygiene, which is more or less how hygiene works in this century. After the face washing comes the wig. Your wig, the one that is slightly too small, the one from 2 years ago, is a brigadier, not the largest style, not the towering architectural achievement that court wigs can be. Those structures of horsehair and pomade that require their own engineering. A brigadier is a working wig, conservative, appropriate to a country magistrate of sound opinions and moderate fashion sense. It curls at the temples, it bags at the back in a black silk bag, it sits with authority. It also itches. The wig itches because beneath it your natural hair is cut very short and stubbled and produces sweat, even in November, even in a cold room, because the wig traps heat with admirable efficiency. The itching is manageable. You have learned to not scratch in public, which is one of the small disciplines of Georgian gentleman life, of which there are many. Your face. Let us look at your face, since you are looking at it now in the small silver frame mirror above the dressing table. It is 43 years old. It is round, rounder than it used to be. The jaw that was once fairly clean has softened into a series of gentle slopes descending toward your cravat. Your colour, that lobster red we mentioned, is technically described by Dr. Chalmers as a consequence of plethora. Too much blood. Too many years of rich food producing too much of the kind of blood that presses hard against the inner walls of the veins, which then show through skin that has, over 20 years, become very good at broadcasting the internal state of the man it covers. Your nose, in particular, is artistic in its redness. Your eyes are good, brown, clear, sharp. Whatever else is going on, the eyes are still doing their job. You nod at the mirror in the way that a man acknowledges a letter containing news that is neither better nor worse than expected. Hewson is waiting with the shirt. Dressing a Georgian gentleman of your size is a team sport. The shirt first, linen, fresh-washed, the smell of it, the slightly chalky smell of dried linen aired in cold November. Then the breeches, which require the careful sitting and the careful standing, and the strategic positioning of 2 strong hands, one of them Hewson's. Then the stockings, rolled up over the knees and buckled, and this is the part that requires the most care around the foot. Then the waistcoat, which buttons across a chest and stomach that have grown, incrementally, every year, like a building receiving additions, so that the waistcoat that fit well 3 years ago now requires a slight breath out to fasten the lower 2 buttons. You breathe out. The buttons submit. The coat, dark blue superfine, excellent quality, is easier than the waistcoat because the coat simply hangs. The coat does not have opinions about your dimensions. The coat merely covers shoes on the right foot, the special structure on the left, the cane, silver-topped mahogany shaft, which has been waiting by the door since last October, and which you initially regarded as a concession and have since come to regard as a feature. The cane is not weakness. The cane is architecture. The cane distributes weight and changes your silhouette and gives you something to do with the right hand in conversation. All of this is taken, and you can check the clock on the mantelpiece, which Hewson winds every morning as part of the ritual. 45 minutes. 45 minutes to prepare a man to leave his bedroom. Hewson looks at you with the steady, professionally neutral expression of a man who has done this every day for 11 years and intends to do it every day for 11 more, or until circumstances alter. Breakfast, sir? Yes, you say. Let's see what we can manage. The breakfast room is on the ground floor. This means stairs. Stairs are, for your left foot, a statement of intent, not a possibility. Not something to be approached with optimism, a declaration. You're going downstairs and the foot will comply, and the cost of compliance will be tallied and paid in the particular currency that the foot accepts, which is discomfort. You take the stairs one at a time. Right foot first, both hands on the banister, the cane held under your right arm. Left foot joins the right on the same step before you proceed to the next. The method of a toddler, with more dignity because you have had 43 years to practice dignity, and you apply it now. The staircase is oak, 12 steps, with a landing at the turn. The carved newel post at the bottom has a pineapple finial. Your father had it done in 1721, when pineapples were still expensive enough to be status symbols, before the trade routes got sorted, and pineapples became merely exotic rather than extraordinary. The finial is now slightly dusty. You must speak to Mrs. Anseth about that. You descend the 12 steps in approximately the time it would take a healthy man to descend 3. At the bottom, the house opens around you. The hallway, which is large, the smell of the house in winter, beeswax candles, wood smoke, the particular cold stone and plaster smell that large old country houses generate in their bones, this smell of mortar that has been absorbing the smell of centuries and releasing it slowly, the smell of something being cooked in the far kitchen, past the green baize door, past the servants' passage, in the other half of the house that runs the house, and another smell, underneath everything else, the smell that is always there when you slow down enough to notice it, the smell of your own body underneath the hungry water, underneath the clean linen, the smell of a body that works very hard just to maintain its current state, a faint, sour, sweet smell, metabolic, organic, the smell of a system under strain. You have learned not to think about it. The breakfast room is warm. A good fire, properly built, doing its job. The table is set for one. You are a widower, have been for 8 years, and there are no children. A grief that you have arranged very carefully into a particular compartment and locked the door on, because grief of that specific kind, for a Georgian gentleman of your generation and temperament, belongs in a locked compartment and not at breakfast. The table is set for one with white rolls, fresh from the kitchen, butter in a dish, a yellow block the size of a fist, cold ham sliced, a dish of eggs scrambled with cream, still hot in a covered silver dish, a small covered pot of potted char, a fish preparation from a jar bought in Bath last summer, a pot of coffee, real coffee, good coffee, not the thin stuff they sell in the cheaper coffee houses. Your coffee is Jamaica coffee, bought through a merchant in Bristol, which means it has crossed an ocean and half a continent and costs accordingly, and smells, when you lift the lid of the pot, of something almost spiritual. And beside the coffee pot, a small decanter of Madeira wine. It is 8 o'clock in the morning. The Madeira is not unusual, it is standard. Georgian breakfast tables of your class routinely feature wine alongside coffee or tea, because wine is, in Georgian medical thinking, fortifying. Especially for a man of constitution, especially in cold weather. Dr. Chalmers has, on multiple occasions, specifically recommended a morning glass of Madeira for its strengthening effect on the digestive organs. Dr. Chalmers is not going to give your great-great-grandchildren very good advice about a lot of things. You pour a cup of coffee first. Real hunger requires coffee. The smell of it, thick and dark in the cold breakfast room, is one of the dependable pleasures of the morning that the foot has not thus far managed to take from you. You try the eggs. The eggs are good. The cream makes them rich, and the cream is real cream from real cows that live 300 yards away in the actual home farm, which is one of the genuine advantages of country life over the city. The food is not a mystery. The food is visibly connected to animals and fields that you can see from the breakfast room window. The window is full of frost-grey November light. The fields are brown and silver. The elms at the end of the drive are bare. A single crow is sitting on the fence post by the kitchen garden, doing nothing in particular with the considered patience of a creature that has decided all the work of November morning is someone else's problem. You watch the crow and eat your eggs. The ham you take 2 slices of. The rolls, 1 with a good amount of butter. The Madeira, half a glass, which is not, you are aware, a meaningful amount of restraint. A full glass would be 1 unit more. Half a glass is the gesture in the direction of moderation, not the thing itself. But the Madeira is warm and slightly sweet, and it settles the stomach's overnight unease with the particular efficiency of alcohol that has been doing that specific job for centuries. Here is what is happening, chemically, as you eat this breakfast. The eggs are protein. Good. Necessary. The rolls are refined carbohydrates. Fine. Probably. The ham is protein and fat and salt. The butter is fat. The cream in the eggs is fat. The Madeira is sugar and alcohol. And the fat, the pure rendered animal fat that has been at the centre of your diet for 20 years, accumulated and celebrated and served at the finest tables in 2 counties. The fat is doing several things, none of which Dr. Chalmers has yet been able to explain, but all of which your arteries are privately documenting. The crystals in your foot began with this, with the meat and the wine, with the purines in the organ meats, the kidneys and the sweetbreads and the brain sauce, purines that the liver cannot process quickly enough, that accumulate in the blood, that deposit in the coldest joints, the extremities, the feet. You are eating, this morning, approximately what caused last night's 3 o'clock crisis. There is a logic to this that you have, in 43 years, been unable to identify, because the logic is, stop eating the food that is doing this to you, which is advice that, in 1758, no one is in a position to give you, because no one yet knows that is the advice. Dr. Chalmers knows that port wine appears correlated with the gout. He has suggested mildly twice that you might reduce your port consumption. You have reduced it from 2 glasses at dinner to 1 glass at dinner and 1 in the evening. This has not resolved the gout. This has satisfied the requirement that you demonstrate you are taking the matter seriously. You finish the eggs. You pour a second cup of coffee. Outside, the crow has been joined by two more crows. They are having what appears to be a disagreement about the fence post. This is more interesting than most of what will happen before noon. You have letters to deal with. You have a tenant dispute to resolve. You have a quarterly account to review. You have Dr. Chalmers arriving at 11 for his regular visit, which will involve the routine humiliations that your body currently requires and which you have arranged over 4 years to endure with the same surface equanimity you bring to the dinner table. It is 8:30 in the morning. The day has barely started. Your foot is at a 5. 5 is manageable. 5 is the number that a man can build a day around. You finish the coffee. Dr. Chalmers arrives at 11:15, which is 15 minutes late, which is something that 3 years ago would have irritated you, and which now you have come to accept as part of the man's character, in the same way you accept the particular yellow of his waistcoat and his habit of saying quite so, before he has finished listening to what you're saying. He is 58 years old. He trained in Edinburgh, which in 1758 is considered excellent medical training, and Edinburgh training is indeed, by the standards of 1758, quite rigorous. He knows anatomy. He has read Sydenham on gout and Boerhaave on fevers, and he has, in 30 years of practice, accumulated a snuff clinical experience to be genuinely useful for a certain range of conditions. Unfortunately, those conditions do not include the ones you have. Good morning, good morning. He hands his coat to Hewson and carries his bag, a large leather physician's bag of the kind that suggests contents of both complexity and authority, into the morning room where you are waiting. He looks at you. He looks the way physicians look, a rapid, comprehensive assessment that he does without appearing to do it, sizing up your colour and your posture and the way the foot is positioned and the degree of brightness in your eyes. The gout troubled you last night. It did. The laudanum, 20 drops, it helped. Quite so, quite so. He settles himself in the chair across from you, opens his bag with the brisk efficiency of a man who has opened this bag 10,000 times and knows exactly where everything is. Let me see the foot. The examination of the foot takes several minutes. He presses the joint in specific places, assessing the swelling, the temperature of the inflamed area versus the surrounding tissue, the tenderness at various points. You breathe through it. He makes notes on a small paper in his coat pocket. I want to bleed you, he says. Here we are. Bloodletting, phlebotomy, the practice of opening a vein and removing a quantity of blood as a therapeutic measure. It has been practiced since ancient Egypt. It is currently practiced, in 1758, as a first-line treatment for an enormous range of conditions including fever, inflammation, chest complaints, headaches, excessive emotion, insufficient emotion, and gout. The theory is the humoral theory. The body contains 4 humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and illness results from their imbalance. Removing blood reduces the quantity of the overabundant humour, restoring balance. This is, as a theory of human physiology, completely wrong. It will remain official medical practice for another century. How much, you ask? No more than 12 ounces. 12 ounces. A little under a pint. Dr. Chalmers considers this a moderate amount. He has patients he has bled to 30 ounces and felt good about. And you believe this will help the gout? The gout, he says, with the patient tone of a man who has explained this several times, arises from an excess of corrupt blood concentrated in the extremities. Drawing the blood here, he touches the inside of your elbow, reduces the general plethora, and creates a compensatory flow away from the affected joint. You look at him. Quite so, you say. The phlebotomy kit is laid out on the small table Hewson has placed beside your chair. A lancet, a small sharp blade in a brass handle, a white porcelain bowl, pre-warmed, a length of linen bandage. You roll up your sleeve. Your inner elbow, in the crook of the arm, shows the evidence of previous bleedings. Small, pale scars. Not many. Enough to map the history. Dr. Chalmers applies a tourniquet, a flat piece of ribbon, above the elbow. The vein rises. He's quick and precise with the lancet because, however wrong the theory, the technique has been refined over centuries. The blood comes. It is very red. Darker than you somehow always expect. It fills the bowl with a sound that is soft and liquid, and not worth describing in more detail than that. You look at the ceiling. There is a water stain in the far corner of the morning room ceiling from a roof leak that was repaired 3 years ago but left its mark. You've been meaning to have that painted over. You think about this, about the ceiling, about the paint. Dr. Chalmers watches the bowl. When he has taken what he determines is a sufficient quantity, you cannot see from here and are not looking, he loosens the tourniquet and presses the linen to the incision. Pressure, he says. You press. He watches your face. Any dizziness? Some. This is true. A faint greyness at the edges of things. The room is slightly less solid than it was. Excellent. That suggests the blood was oppressive. The dizziness means the pressure is releasing. You can feel in your chest the heartbeat adjusting itself to the new calculation. It was beating with a certain force. It is now beating with slightly less of one thing and slightly more of another. Your body is tallying. The foot, you ask. He considers. It won't help immediately. These things take time. I'd expect to see improvement within 48 hours as the plethoric blood is removed from the extremities. He's been saying this in various forms for 4 years. The foot does not typically improve within 48 hours of a bleeding, but he is not wrong about everything. The chest, the tightness in the chest that you've been monitoring with the careful attention of a man who suspects something he cannot name. He's actually right that the bleeding reduces the pressure on the heart, temporarily. By reducing the total volume of blood the heart must move. This is, almost accidentally, a medically defensible response to the early stages of what you and he call plethora, and what a physician 200 years from now would call hypertensive cardiovascular disease. He's right for the wrong reasons, which is, you've come to understand the summary of Georgian medicine. He bandages your arm. He gives you instructions. He recommends the camphor continued, the foot elevated when sitting, no exercise of the limb which you've been following scrupulously, a reduction in port wine, which he mentions a third time, with slightly more emphasis than the previous 2, and, new this visit, a course of Dr. Dover's powder. Dr. Dover's powder. Thomas Dover invented it 50 years ago, and it has become a standard treatment for gout. The active ingredients: powdered opium, powdered ipecac root, an emetic, which means it makes you vomit, and potassium sulfate. The reasoning being that the vomiting induced by the ipecac will, combined with the pain relief of the opium, produce a net beneficial effect. You want to give me something that makes me sick, you say. The sickness is part of the process. Dr. Chalmers nods. The expulsion of the corrupt material through the stomach serves to... Yes, all right. He leaves the powder in a small paper twist on the table. He gives Hewson instructions for its preparation. He takes 3 guineas from Hewson, counts them, pockets them, and departs with the manner of a man who has done excellent work and knows it. The door closes. You sit with your bandaged arm and your still inflamed foot, and the small paper twist of powder that will make you sick on purpose. The morning room feels very still. You pick up the paper twist and examine it. Grey powder. It smells of nothing good. You put it back down. Hewson. Sir? Open the port. A pause. Sir? I am aware of the irony. He does not respond to this because acknowledging the irony would require him to have an opinion about his employer's medical decisions, which is not within the scope of his position. He opens the port. The port is a 10-year-old Douro Valley vintage, deep ruby, full-bodied, with a sweetness that rides on top of an iron-dark earthiness underneath. It was laid down in this cellar in 1748, and it has matured into something that, whatever else it is doing to your blood and your joints and your liver, is genuinely excellent wine. You drink it slowly, looking out the window at the November fields. The crow is still there. On days when the foot is bad, truly bad, not the working through it bad of a 5 or 6, but the honest 9 and above that you had last night. Getting around the house and grounds requires the bath chair. Today, the foot has settled to a 7 by mid-morning, which means you can walk short distances. Longer distances require the chair. The bath chair is a wheelchair essentially, a chair with large wheels at the back and a small wheel at the front which can be pushed by a servant from behind. It belongs to a class of equipment that you have acquired gradually over the past 3 years. The cane first, then the specially made boot, then the bath chair stored in the stable block and brought out on the days when Hewson makes the judgment call. It is the bath chair, an extraordinary object in terms of what it represents. You are by every outward measure a man of position and authority. You own this house and these fields. You make decisions. You issue judgments at the county bench. Men stand when you enter a room. And when you need to cross the garden to inspect the kitchen garden wall, which has developed a concerning crack over the summer, you are pushed in a wheeled chair by a young stable hand named Cooper, who is 17 years old, healthy, strong, and perfectly capable of walking round the garden all day without once acknowledging that anything about this situation is remarkable. This is Georgian social decorum. Nobody comments on the chair. Nobody has, in 3 years, made a single direct observation about the fact that you use it. The chair exists. You use it when needed. This is apparently unremarkable, in the same way that your lobster-coloured face and your 3-layer flannel foot are apparently unremarkable. There are advantages to a society with very strict rules about what is and is not acknowledged in polite company. Today, you need the chair for the vegetable garden wall, and also for a tour of the home farm because the bailiff has a report he needs to give you on the state of the winter barley, and because the home farm is 300 yards from the house, which is, on a 7-foot morning post-bleeding, approximately 290 yards further than your foot wishes to travel. Cooper is a good pusher. He has learned the terrain of the grounds in the particular way that a 17-year-old learns things assigned to him. Completely, practically, without theoretical apparatus. He knows which paths are smooth and which have ruts. He knows the slope at the edge of the kitchen garden and how to compensate for it. He steers with the confidence of someone who has been doing this for 8 months and has, over that time, developed genuine competence. You sit in the chair and watch the estate go past. It is a good estate. Not grand. Not the sort of thing that appears in prints or receives visitors for its park, but solid. well managed. The bailiff, Whitmore, is a careful man who keeps good accounts and knows his tenants, and has never, in 14 years of service, made an error that cost you money he couldn't account for. The fields in November are brown and silver, as they were from the window, but different up close. The smell out here, cold air, winter-rotted vegetation, the particular damp earth smell of fields that have been harvested and are now resting, is clean in a way that the inside of the house, with all its fires and candles and habited bodies, is not. You breathe it in. Cold hits the back of your throat and fills your lungs with something that feels briefly medicinal. Actually medicinal, not Chalmers medicinal. The real kind. The kind that has nothing in a bottle and requires no prescription. Stop a moment, Cooper. Cooper stops. You look at the field. The sky above it is a flat, pale grey, a November sky that has decided on its mood for the day and committed to it. 3 rooks are working the far end of the field, pulling something from the frozen soil. The elms stand bare and black against the grey. 43 years old, in a wheeled chair, in November, in a field you have known since you were a boy. This field, your father walked this field. His father too. The family has had this land for 130 years, back to the Restoration, when your great-great-grandfather was given it by a king in settlement of a debt that history does not record very clearly, and that the family records are slightly vague about. 130 years. You will not live another 130 years. The particular thought, the actuarial thought, the one that you keep in the locked compartment with the grief, appears briefly, acknowledges itself, and is returned to the compartment. Not yet. Not this field, not this sky. All right, Cooper, on to the bailiff. Cooper pushes you on. The bailiff's office is a low-ceilinged room above the stable block, smelling of hay and leather and the particular dry dust smell of old paper. Whitmore has been the bailiff here for 14 years and has arranged the office in the way that man arranges a space he intends to be in for a long time. Everything has its place. Everything is labelled. The ledgers on the shelf run chronologically from left to right, with a precision that is its own kind of argument. He is a man of 50, spare and weathered, and wearing a coat that has seen better decades, not because he cannot afford a better coat, but because he is the kind of man who sees no reason to buy a better coat, when the coat he has is still doing its job. His hands, as you shake them, are rough and dry, the hands of a man who spends time outdoors in all weather, handling things, touching things, working with his body in ways that produce competence and hard skin. Sir, he looks at the chair, not at it. His eyes don't rest on it. But there is a slight adjustment of his expression. That is the suppression of looking at it. The barley? Yes, the barley. The report takes 20 minutes. The winter barley is in the ground on the east field and the south field, the seed acquired from a reputable merchant in the nearest market town, the germination looking promising given the early frosts. There is a problem with one of the drainage ditches on the north boundary that has been causing standing water in the corner of the north field, and Whitmore has a plan for it that requires the hire of 2 extra labouring men for a week. He lays out the plan with the numbered clarity of a man who has thought it through. You listen, you ask questions. Good questions, actually. You've been managing this estate for 20 years, and you know your fields and your drainage and your soil types, with a precision that would surprise people who see only the gout and the chair. The mind, as you noted this morning, is still good. The mind engages with the drainage ditch problem with something that is underneath the careful gentleman's manner, genuine interest. This is what is easy to miss from the outside. What is easy to miss about a man in a bath chair, in an overheated room, with a lobster face, and a foot wrapped in flannel and a morning glass of Madeira at breakfast. He still thinks. He still cares about the barley. The drainage ditch that is not working is a real problem with a real solution, and solving it means the Northfield stays productive, and the Northfield staying productive means the tenants on the north side of the estate have a viable crop to work with, and the tenants having viable crops means the estate remains financially sound, and the estate remaining financially sound means you can continue to pay your people and maintain your buildings and contribute your portion, a modest portion, but a real one, to the ongoing project of making this particular piece of English countryside function. This still matters to you. This has not been taken. The 2 extra men, you say, hire them from the village, young and strong if you can find them, and tell them the south ditch may need the same treatment in the spring, so there'll be more work if they do well. Whitmore nods. He writes it in the ledger. The kitchen garden wall, you say. I saw the crack. Yes, sir. It's been there since August. I was waiting for a dry fortnight before we repointed it. The mason in the village is available now if you want him. Book him before Christmas if possible. Yes, sir. You deal with 3 more items. A gate that needs new ironwork. A question about the rent from one of the tenant cottages where the family has had a difficult autumn. A request from the vicar. A formal letter, very beautifully written, for a contribution toward the church roof fund. On the tenant cottage, you reduce the quarter's rent by half. The family has had a sick child, and a sick child's winter is expensive. This is, in the ledger, a loss. In the accounting that you run in your own mind, it is something else. You have been, in your time, a hard landlord and an easy one. The hard landlord gets his money and his estate deteriorates. The easy one, the one who makes certain calculations about what kind of community makes a viable estate, and who does the arithmetic a different way, gets something else, gets tenants who fix their own fences, who report problems before they become catastrophes, who regard the relationship as something more than extraction. The gout has, if anything, sharpened this. When you spend enough time in pain, enough time aware of the transience and vulnerability of the body, you develop a certain appreciation for the interdependence of things. Or perhaps you always had it. Hard to say. Thank you, Whitmore. That's all for today. He sees you to the door with the same unacknowledged decorum as everyone else, holding the door, offering a hand for the step down from the office to the stable yard, making none of it visible. Cooper is waiting with the chair. You sit. The estate unfolds around you on the way back to the house. The November fields and the bare trees and the 3 rooks still working the far end of the field, and overhead the grey sky holds its particular light, in that way the English November sky does, flat and cold and impartial, distributing its meagre winter daylight with perfect democratic indifference. Back inside, at your desk in the study, which is the room you have fitted specifically for the management of correspondence and accounts, and the reading that fills your evenings. The desk is large, leather-topped, with a chair that has been adjusted, cushioned and modified and repositioned over years, to be the most comfortable piece of furniture in the house for your specific body. The letters. There are 7 of them this morning, arrived with the carrier from the market town yesterday evening. Hewson has opened the outer covers, sorted them by apparent urgency and placed them in order. The first is from your solicitor in London, legal matter relating to a property boundary dispute with a neighbour, a matter that has been running for 2 years and cost both parties money and time in approximately equal measure, and which, if either party had the sense to sit in a room together for an afternoon, could probably be resolved. You write a reply instructing your solicitor to propose exactly this. The second is from your cousin in Bath. Bath. The city of the invalid, the city of the fashionably sick, the city where Georgian England sends its most troublesome bodies to take the waters and be seen taking the waters, and incidentally to participate in the most elaborately structured social life available outside of London. Bath, where the Roman baths have been channeling the mineral spring since before England was England, where the water comes up out of the earth at 30 degrees Celsius, slightly sulphurous, slightly metallic, carrying minerals that have been filtering through the limestone for 10,000 years, and which arrive at the surface tasting of the deep, dark time of geology. Your cousin writes that Bath is excellent this autumn, that the pump room is very gay, that there is good company, and that the waters have done wonders for my nerves, and that she insists you make the trip before Christmas. Bath is 2 days' journey by carriage, 2 days' journey in a carriage, with the roads in November, with the particular geometry of your body and your foot, 2 days in a carriage, and then the pump room, where you would stand or sit and drink 3 glasses of the mineral water per day, per the standard prescription, and the water might help. The sulphur and the magnesium and the calcium might, in some small measurable way, assist the joint. The warmth of the baths might ease the stiffness, or it might not. But Bath is where a man in your condition goes. It is what is done. It is on the official list of responses to gout, alongside the camphor and the bleeding and the Dover's powder. Bath is the response that at least has the advantage of getting you out of this house, away from the November fields and the grey sky, into a city that is alive with people and music and gossip, and the particular comedy of watching other wealthy invalids take their medicine alongside you. You write back to your cousin. You will come in the first week of December. You're grateful for the invitation. You hope the waters continue to do their work on her nerves. You fold the letter and seal it and set it aside for the carrier. The remaining 5 letters are dealt with in order. An account from a wine merchant in Bristol. 2 cases of the port, 1 of Madeira delivered. A letter from a friend in London full of political news about Parliament and the ongoing debate around the war with France, which has been going on for 2 years and shows no signs of resolution. A notice from the county bench about a quarter sessions meeting in January. 2 letters of less importance, dealt with briefly. By the time the letters are done, it is 1:30. Luncheon. Luncheon is a lighter meal than dinner by the standards of the house. Light. A soup, something clear and chickeny with bread. Cold cuts from the ham. A small glass of wine. You eat at the desk, which Hewson has cleared and relaid for this purpose, because walking to the dining room for luncheon alone involves a negotiation with the foot that you've decided is not necessary. The dining room is for occasions. Luncheon is fueling. The soup is good. The kitchen, presided over by Mrs. Garrett, produces honest food. Not grand. Grand food, the kind you have at other people's houses and produce here when there are guests, is a project that requires days of preparation and results in dishes that are remarkable and exhausting. On a Tuesday in November, with no guests, what the kitchen produces is honest, which is worth more. You eat, Your body's response to eating is something you monitor now with a precision that you didn't apply to it 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you ate because eating was a pleasure and a social activity and a defining feature of life at this income level, which it is. But you ate without particular attention to what happened after. Now you pay attention. The soup goes down easily. The stomach accepts it with cautious approval. The bread, likewise. The ham, the wine. You take a sip and hold it for a moment. And here is a thing about gout that no one tells you until it is too late. The pleasure of the port, the Madeira, the wine that you've been drinking since you were 15 years old, and that has been part of your understanding of what a good life looks like. It is still a pleasure. The taste is still genuinely wonderful. The warmth is still real. The slightly lifted quality of the world after the first glass is still worth having. And at the same time, somewhere underneath it, there is the knowledge that accumulates in the body of a man who has woken at 3 a.m. enough times to understand the connection, even if he cannot name it. You drink the wine. You think about Bath, the pump room at Bath, where they will give you 3 glasses of the mineral water, and you will drink them standing at the counter, or sitting, but you will try to stand. And the taste of the mineral water is sulphurous and warm and strangely compelling, like drinking geology. Like drinking a reminder that the Earth's timescale makes your current foot situation rather small. There are people at Bath who've been coming every year for 20 years, who have organised their entire calendar around the season, who have in some ways been consumed by their conditions, made smaller by them, reduced from people who happen to be unwell to invalids who happen to have lives attached. You are not going to be one of them. This is a decision you have made with more confidence in some month than in others. The afternoon is the body's low tide. Morning has its urgency. The waking, the dressing, the letters, the visits, the management of the day. Evening has its structure. Dinner, conversation, the habits of the night. But the afternoon is the body's own time in a way. The post-luncheon hour when the blood goes to the digestion and away from the extremities and the mind and the particular specific tiredness of a body working constantly against itself makes itself known in a way that requires attention. In the young man you were 20 years ago, when this same body was carrying 30 fewer pounds and a rather different set of expectations, an afternoon tiredness was something to be powered through, something that yielded to will. In this body, in November 1758, the afternoon tiredness is not something that yields to will. It is something that requires accommodation. You have learned this. It took several years, and the learning of it felt, at the time, like a defeat. Like the body winning a negotiation you'd not agreed to enter. And now it simply is part of the day. After luncheon, 2 hours of rest. Not sleep, necessarily. Sleep feels like too large a concession. But rest. The chair, the ottoman under the foot, the fire, perhaps a book. The study has a good fire. The chair by the fire has the ottoman already positioned because Hewson has been doing this for years and knows the geography of the afternoon. You read. The book is Fielding, Tom Jones, published 9 years ago, which you've read twice already and are reading again because it is companionable. Because Fielding understands something about the comedy of the body, the comedy of appetite and ambition, and the gap between how people wish to appear and how they are. There is something in it that feels, on grey November afternoons, like company. Your eyes get heavy around the 3rd chapter. You close the book, marking the page with a slip of paper. The fire shifts. A log settles, sending a brief increase of warmth across the room. The smell of wood smoke intensifies for a moment. Sweet, resinous. The smell of the English countryside that has been burning indoors for as long as there have been English countrysides. Outside, the afternoon is darkening. November afternoons in this latitude are brief. The light starts giving up around 3 o'clock and is entirely gone by 4:30, and the darkness that follows is the deep, honest darkness of the country, unlit by the coal smoke haze of London, lit only by moon and stars when the clouds allow. In the study by the fire, you rest, not sleep, something adjacent to it. The body settle in like the log in the grate, finding a lower energy state. Here, in the quiet, the body makes itself known in a different way than it does in pain. Not pain now. Something more like inventory. The foot, 7. Still 7, which means the bleeding has not yet produced the 48-hour improvement that Dr. Chalmers predicts, and that you do not expect. The chest, quiet. The tightness that visits sometimes in the mornings, that makes the stairs slow, is absent right now. Right now the chest is merely doing its work, the heart beating with its current slightly too hard effort, the lungs filling and emptying, the stomach satisfied for once, at peace in the temporary way of a difficult thing that has been given what it asked for. The knees, stiff. They are always stiff in cold weather. The cartilage, you don't know the word cartilage yet, but you know the sensation, is wearing, in the way of a joint that has carried weight for 43 years, and more weight in the last 10. The hands, good. The hands are the only part of the physical inventory that are genuinely fine. The hands are still the hands of a man who handles things. Pens and paper, forks and glasses, the reins of a horse when he still rode horses regularly, the texture of the ledger pages, the covers of books. They are slightly padded with the weight you have put on, but they are nimble, capable. You look at your hands resting in your lap. Good hands. You close your eyes. At 5, Hewson reappears. This is the second dressing of the day, which is another feature of Georgian life that takes time to accept. You dress in the morning for the day, and then you dress again in the early evening for dinner, even if dinner is only yourself, because the habits of a gentleman's household are maintained regardless of whether there is anyone present to observe them. The evening coat is a darker blue than the morning coat. The waistcoat for evening is embroidered, not wildly, not the gold thread excess of court fashion, but with a tasteful pattern of small flowers in cream silk thread that your late wife chose and that you have continued to wear without ever consciously deciding to. Because the alternative involves acknowledging why you would stop. She chose all your waistcoats, the embroidered ones and the plain ones and the slightly unusual green one that you still cannot quite decide about. She had strong opinions about fabric and embroidery patterns and the appropriate level of formality for a country dinner, and you trusted those opinions absolutely, and since she is gone you have simply continued with the inventory she established. This is grief made functional. You have made a lot of things functional that started as grief. It is a skill that develops out of necessity. The foot. Hewson unwraps and rewraps, applies the camphor again, refits the structure. Your colour in the evening mirror is perhaps slightly better than this morning. The bleeding will not have helped yet. The 48-hour improvement that isn't coming. But the rest has done something. The red is slightly less alarming. The eyes are clearer. You look, in the evening light, like a man who is holding things together with determination and good tailoring. This is an accurate assessment. Who is coming tonight? You'd forgotten to check. This is new, the forgetting. Small things, names, appointments, the schedule that used to live in your head fully formed now sometimes requires retrieval. Sir Bellamy and his wife, sir, and Mr. Holt. Ah, of course, you knew this. The dinner invitation sent 3 weeks ago when the foot was better and the prospect of company seemed uncomplicated. Sir Frederick Bellamy, county neighbour, magistrate, fox-hunting man, excellent company in moderate doses. His wife, Lady Bellamy, whose social intelligence is sharp enough to be uncomfortable, and whose conversation once directed at you requires your full attention. Mr. Holt, Thomas Holt, your oldest friend in this county. 48 years old, thin, healthy, drinks moderately, walks 6 miles a day, doesn't hunt but fishes, and whose physical ease, the ease of a body that has not yet been called to account, you regard with a mixture of affection and something that is not quite envy, but is adjacent to it. 3 guests for dinner, the appropriate amount for a Tuesday in the country. The table will be set for 4. Mrs. Garrett will have been at work since this morning. The smells from the kitchen, which have been building since about 3, crossing through the baize door and making their way into the main house, suggest considerable effort. What are we eating? Hewson has this information. He always has this information, gathered from the kitchen in the course of his day through the network of servants' communication that runs parallel to the main household, slightly more efficient, entirely invisible to the people who employ them. Soup, sir, roast saddle of mutton, a fricassee of chicken, a dressed crab, Mrs. Garrett managed one from the carrier, and a raised pie, I believe, syllabub and sweetmeats after. A pause. And Dr. Chalmers' notes, sir, recommend against the mutton. Dr. Chalmers' notes recommend against everything that matters. Yes, sir, you consider the saddle of mutton, rich, fat-covered, slow-roasted, the kind of dish that appears on Georgian dinner tables, because Georgian dinner tables are organised around the principle that the quality of a meal is measured in the quantity and richness of what it contains. Saddle of mutton is not gout food. Saddle of mutton is, in the specific biochemistry of your condition, a contributor. A Purinous delivery, another deposit of crystals waiting to form. You will eat some of it. You will not eat all of it. This is your version of restraint. The guests arrive at 6, which is the agreed time, and they arrive on time because they are all close enough, none more than 3 miles, and because punctuality at dinner is a social obligation among people who understand social obligation. Sir Frederick comes first, ahead of his wife, because he rode, and she came in the carriage, and Sir Frederick always looks better on a horse than in a carriage. He is 61 years old, broad-shouldered, red-faced from years of riding in English weather, wearing a coat that has been cut for a man who does physical things and expects his coat to accommodate them. He shakes your hand with the grip of a man who still considers himself vigorous and intends to remain so. The gout? He asks, because Sir Frederick does not do the thing of not acknowledging it. Sir Frederick acknowledges everything directly, which is one of the things that makes him both very comfortable and occasionally alarming to spend time with. 7 this evening, you tell him. He nods. My father had it. Last years of his life. He said port was the cause and refused to give it up. Died at 71 with a glass of Douro in his hand. A fine way to go, you say. He thought so. Lady Bellamy arrives from the carriage, her dress the deep green appropriate to evening in the country. Not London green, not court green, but a considered country green, and with the particular energy of a woman who has been thinking about this dinner since the invitation arrived and has prepared for it in ways that no one in the room, including you, will ever know the full extent of. You look well, she tells you, which is not true but is accurate in the sense that you look better than she expected and she is being kind. You're gracious, you say, which is also accurate. Thomas Holt comes last, on foot, having walked the 2 miles from his house with a lantern, and apparently no discomfort whatsoever, because Thomas Holt is the kind of man for whom a November walk is simply a good idea, and not a production. He looks at the chair, still in the hallway from the afternoon, waiting to be returned to the stable, and at your foot, and at you, and says, "Worse this week?" "About the same." He nods. He doesn't say more. Thomas Holt understands the landscape of this thing in a way that most people don't, because he pays attention, and he's been watching it for 6 years. The 4 of you sit down to dinner. Here is the table in November 1758. A white tablecloth starched, silverware, the family silver, cleaned this afternoon by the houseboy in a process that involved a great deal of elbow grease and whiting powder. 4 places, each set with the appropriate succession of implements. Candlelight from the candelabra in the middle, reflecting off the silver and the crystal, and the polished table beneath the cloth. The soup first, clear, with barley and a good broth, and the smell of it filling the room in a way that is immediately reassuring. The smell of hot, good things on a cold night, the smell that belongs entirely to November evenings, and the warmth of firelit rooms. And then the conversation begins. Conversation at a Georgian dinner is its own discipline. There are topics, and there are rules about topics, and the art of it is producing discussion that feels natural, while conforming perfectly to the unspoken terms of what is allowed. Politics is allowed, carefully, with the understanding that certain positions are shared, and certain others are not challenged on. Local matters are always appropriate. Personal matters are discussed in the particular way that discusses them without discussing them. Sir Frederick wants to talk about the war. The 7 Years' War has been running since 1756. England is fighting France on approximately 3 continents simultaneously. In North America, where General Wolfe is doing things that will shortly become history. In India, where Clive is doing things that will become empire. And in Europe, where alliances are being renegotiated with a complexity that makes the drainage ditch problem seem simple. "We'll win in America," Sir Frederick says. He says it the way he says most things, as a statement of fact, not a prediction. It's only a matter of time. Wolfe's a capable man. "Wolfe's a very sick man," Thomas Holt says. "I've heard his health is poor." "All the best generals are sick men," Sir Frederick says. He looks at you briefly, acknowledging that this observation has a local application, which you acknowledge by not acknowledging. Lady Bellamy has intelligence about the bath season that she delivers with the precision of a woman who has been filing information for 3 weeks, waiting for the right social occasion. Bath, the pump room, the assembly rooms, the specific names of specific people you know, in various states of medical tourism. "Mrs. Hargreaves has a gout now," she tells you, as if conferring a membership. "Left foot. She was in the pump room every morning last month. How is the water treating her? She says she believes it helps. but she's also a woman of 62 who wishes to believe what she has come all this way to believe, so it's hard to know. This is Lady Bellamy at her sharpest. The truth carried inside something that sounds like conversation. You eat the soup. The mutton arrives. It is extraordinary. The saddle has been roasted on the proper spit, over the proper fire for the proper time, and what arrives at the table is the colour of mahogany and smelling of the specific harmony of meat, fat and roasting heat, and rosemary that has been part of English cooking since before there was English cooking, since before there was England, since there was just a cold island and something to roast on a fire. You eat some of it, not all of it. This is the restraint. Sir Frederick eats a great deal of it, with the unself-conscious appetite of a man whose body is still processing what he asks it to process. He compliments the cooking. He asks for more sauce. He pours his second glass of wine. You watch him eat with the specific attention that a man pays to watching someone do easily the thing that cost him. It is not bitterness, not exactly. It is just the observation. The pure factual observation that the body that makes eating a straightforward pleasure is a different kind of body than the one you inhabit, and that this difference is the result of 20 years of choices. Good choices, by the standards of the choices available, good choices that were correct according to all the information that was available at the time of making them, which have accumulated into this body, this foot, this chair in the corner. The fricassee of chicken is excellent. You eat quite a lot of the fricassee of chicken. The dressed crab. Mrs. Garrett has done something with a crab that belongs to a higher category of cooking than the rest of the table, which is already good. Cream, mustard, the crab itself, baked in its shell and served with the brioche-adjacent bread that is her particular recipe. You eat the entire portion. Thomas Holt across the table watches you eat the crab and permits himself a small smile, because he knows you love it and he knows the specific pleasure of watching someone eat something they love when they love it. The syllabub after. Cold, sweet. The cream whipped with wine and lemon, sitting in the crystal glasses like something from a different sensory world than the roasted meat that preceded it. The sweetness hits differently after all that richness. It hits like a reset. Lady Bellamy is in the middle of a story about a duel that was apparently nearly fought at the Bath Assembly Rooms last month, between two men over a disputed dance. A story she tells with the pacing of someone who knows exactly where the humour is and how long to withhold it. The story is very funny. You laugh. Actually laugh. Fully, with the body participating. Chest, shoulders, the involuntary physical expression of genuine amusement that bypasses all the management and the diplomacy and the careful arrangement of the day. The foot pulses. The laughter costs something. A brief spike, a 5 climbing sharply toward a 7, because laughter shifts the weight, moves the blood, moves everything. You don't stop laughing. The story is worth it. The guests leave at 9:30. This is early by the standards of the better dinner parties you've attended, where the conversation and the wine keep the table occupied until midnight and beyond. But 9:30 is the right time for a Tuesday in November in the country, when the roads are dark and cold and the hosts and guests alike have tomorrow's morning coming for them, with its particular indifference to how late they stayed up. Sir Frederick shakes your hand at the door with his vigorous grip. Lady Bellamy kisses your cheek and looks at you with her sharp, kind eyes and says, "Come to Bath, it will do you good." Not the waters, not specifically the waters. You, the going somewhere, the being among people. Thomas Holt is the last to leave. He pauses at the door. "How is it really?" he asks. "Not the foot." You know he doesn't mean the foot. "Manageable," you say. He looks at you for a moment. He's known you for 20 years. He knew you before the gout, before the chair, before Hewson and the camphor and the 3 in the morning calculations. He knew you when this body was different, when you could ride all day and sit at a table for 5 hours and walk the estate and do all of it without thinking about any of it. "Bath," he says. "She's right about Bath." "I know." He nods. He goes. The door closes. The house settles around you. The fire in the study is the right height. Hewson has built it up before withdrawing, knowing, after 11 years, that you will want the study after the guests leave, that the study is where the post-dinner hour goes. You sit. A glass of port is on the small table beside the chair. You poured it before the guests left, with the specific awareness that you were going to drink it, and that Dr. Chalmers would not approve, and that the crystals in the toe will note it in their particular chemical ledger. You drink it. It is very good wine. Here is the thing about the port, not the medical thing, the actual thing, the thing that sits underneath the medical conversation, underneath the doctor's advice, underneath the 48 hours of post-bleeding improvement that doesn't come. The port was part of how this life was supposed to look. You understand this now, at 43, sitting in this chair with the gout and the bleeding and the Madeira at breakfast and all of it. You understand that the life you've been living is not a set of mistakes. It is the life that was offered, the life that was correct, the life that a man of your class and generation was supposed to want, and wanting it, pursue, and pursuing it, achieve. The port at dinner was the sign that you had arrived, that the estate was running, that the tenants were decent and the bailiff was sound and the kitchen was producing and the cellar was stocked. The port was the reward and the proof simultaneously. 20 years of port. And here is the body. You're not sitting in this chair on a Tuesday evening in November, a man who regrets his life. You're not a man who would trade the 20 years, the dinners, the friendships, the work of the estate, the conversations, the books, the very specific pleasures of the specific life you have had, for a lighter foot and a cleaner bill of health. What you have is real. What you have built is real. The fields are in order. The tenants are fairly treated. The kitchen garden wall will be repointed before Christmas. The winter barley is in the ground. Your cousin in Bath is expecting you in December. Thomas Holt walked 2 miles to eat with you, and will walk 2 miles home, and he will do it again whenever you ask, because friendship of that duration has its own weight, independent of how you got there. The laughter tonight, Lady Bellamy's story, the syllabub, the crab. These things happened. They are real. Your left foot is a 7, which is the same as it was this morning. This is the day's answer to itself. It is a 7, which means it is not 8, which means it is not 9, which means you woke up and you dressed and you saw the bailiff and read the letters and rested and ate dinner and laughed and the foot sat where it sat. Not improving, but not worse. Not worse is its own kind of victory. You pour the last of the port. Outside, the November dark is complete and total, and the frost is working on the fields again, laying itself down on the stubble with its patient mineral efficiency. Tomorrow the fields will be white in the early light. The rooks will come back. The elms will stand in their bare particular winter beauty. You will be here to see it. This is not nothing. 3 weeks later, first week of December. The carriage is the large one, the coach, not the lighter chaise, because the coach has more room, and the room matters more than the speed. Hewson has organised the journey with the thoroughness he brings to everything. Departure at 7 in the morning, first stop at a reliable inn for luncheon, second overnight stop at another inn where you have stayed before, and where they know how to prepare a room for a man with a bad foot. The foot on this particular morning is a 6. 6 is good. 6 is, in the arithmetic of this journey, the best you could have reasonably hoped for. 6 means the carriage is possible. 8 would have meant postponement. 9 would have meant the doctor and the laudanum and the certainty that Bath was for another time. But 6 is workable. Hewson helps you into the carriage with the practised efficiency of the past 4 years. The inside of the carriage is prepared. The cushion for the foot placed on the opposite seat at the right height, a travelling rug, a small case with the immediate medical supplies, camphor, laudanum, the bandaging, a book, 2 books, a small basket from Mrs. Garrett with food for the road, because Georgian road food at the inns is unpredictable, and her food is always good. The carriage moves. For a man who has not left his own land for 4 months, the first motion of the carriage is its own particular sensation. They lurch forward, the gravel of the drive giving way to the rutted earth of the lane, the estate sliding past the window, the elm drive, the kitchen garden wall, the home farm, all of it shrinking as the carriage gains the road. Then the road itself. English roads in 1758 are the subject of considerable national complaint, and the complaint is justified. In summer they are adequate, more or less, for wheeled vehicles travelling at reasonable speed. In November they are something else. They are the product of months of rain and traffic and frost and more rain, consolidated into a surface that communicates with extreme directness through the carriage suspension and the seat cushions to the bodies. Inside, including your left foot, the first pothole makes itself known within the first mile. You grip the window frame and breathe. The cushion helps. The cushion, Hewson's careful positioning of the cushion, is doing a great deal of work, but the road is the road. You look out the window, the country in December, fields stripped bare, the hedgerows thick and dark and webbed with frost on the north-facing sides, a village, slate-roofed and smoke-producing, arranged around a church with a tower, children watching the carriage from a gate, a drove of cattle on the road ahead which slows the carriage to a walking pace for 10 minutes, which is irritating in the abstract and rather welcome in terms of the foot. The cattle smell comes through the windows, that strong, close, organic smell of many large animals moving together, which is the smell of the English countryside that gets edited out of the paintings and the poems, but which is there reliably whenever you venture out of the carefully maintained world of the house and grounds. A mud splash comes up from a rear wheel and spatters the window. You cannot see through it for a moment. You laugh, quietly, alone in the carriage. The absurdity of it. The 17 stone of gentlemen in an expensive coat, wrapped in travelling rugs, clutching a cushioned foot, being mud-splattered on a December road on his way to drink sulphurous water at the instruction of a physician who may be making things up. The absurdity, laid out in full like this, is genuinely funny. You settle in for the journey. The city appears from the hill above it, like something from a plate in a book. The bowl of the valley filled with the honey-coloured stone of the new buildings, the terraces and crescents and squares that John Wood began building 20 years ago, that John Wood the younger is continuing now, that are transforming Bath from a moderately famous spa town into one of the most architecturally coherent cities in England, Georgian Bath. Pale yellow limestone from the local quarries, dressed and built with a classical precision that is both imposing and somehow warm. The streets laid out with a geometry that says, someone thought carefully about this, someone had a vision. It is cold. Bath is always slightly cold in December, the valley channeling the wind. But the stone holds the afternoon light even in December, and the city glows with it. The carriage descends the hill and enters the streets. More people than the country. More noise. The specific noise of a city of fashionable seasonal inhabitants. Coaches, sedan chairs, the clatter of horses on paved streets, the voices of 100 conversations happening in the open air. Your cousin is at her lodgings on a good street. She's waiting at the door when the carriage draws up, which is either her natural courtesy or a sign that she's been watching from the window for the past hour. She's 60 years old. She's been coming to Bath every year for 15 years and has, in that time, developed the authority of someone who knows the place thoroughly and is known there thoroughly in return. She knows which inns are worth eating at and which are not. She knows the pump room's rhythms and the assembly room's schedule, and which physicians in the city are genuinely useful, and which are the equivalent of Dr. Chalmers but more expensive. You look terrible, she says as you descend from the carriage. This is her version of affection. I look exactly as I should, you say. Your colour is impossible. Are they still bleeding you? Regularly. She makes a sound of displeasure. Come inside. We'll get you settled, and tomorrow morning we start the waters. The pump room at Bath is the engine of the whole enterprise. Every morning the inhabitants of Bath's lodgings and hotels, the invalids, the hypochondriacs, the genuinely sick, the bored but wealthy, the people who have simply decided that Bath is a good idea this winter, converge on the pump room to drink their prescribed quantity of the mineral water. The room is large, colonnaded, elegant. A small orchestra plays at one end. The windows look out over the abbey. The morning light, when it comes through, falls on the pale stone and the dressed visitors and the attendants at the counter, and the whole thing has the atmosphere of a place that has organised itself around the intersection of health and social life, and has, over decades, perfected this particular combination. You arrive at 9. Your cousin walks beside you. You're using the cane this morning, the footer to 6. Bath's cobblestones having given it something to manage. The water is dispensed by women at a marble counter. You're given a glass, slightly warm, the sulphurous smell rising from it with quiet persistence, the smell of deep earth and deep time. You drink. It tastes of minerals, of limestone, of the specifically geological flavour that comes from water that has been travelling down through the rock for 10,000 years and has picked up the mineral profile of its journey. Not unpleasant. Not pleasant. Something else. Something that requires a specific kind of acceptance. The kind you develop for things that may or may not be doing you good, but are at least doing you no obvious harm. 3 glasses, per the standard protocol. You drink them at intervals, as prescribed, walking slowly between sips. Walking being relative, the cane and the foot and the polished floor of the pump room negotiating a kind of progress. Around you, Bath in December, the other invalids, a man of 60 in a rolling chair pushed by a servant who is navigating the pump room crowd with remarkable precision. 2 women of middle age drinking their water together, their conversation a rapid exchange of information about people you don't know. A young man, very young, 20 perhaps, with a particular grey pallor, of someone whose illness is of a different category than gout. Not the illness of excess, but the illness of diminishment. Tuberculosis, perhaps, or something else of that quiet, persistent kind. Bath takes all of them. The gout sufferers and the consumption cases and the nervous disorders and the people whose physicians have simply run out of other suggestions. Bath offers the water and the social life and the architecture and the clean air relative to London, and leaves the question of which of these is doing the actual work deliberately open, because the ambiguity is part of the product. An elderly baronet you recognise from the county bench is across the room drinking his water with an expression of resigned authority. He spots you and nods. You nod back. "We're all in this together," the nod says. "Whatever this is, your second glass." The sulphurous warmth goes down and sits in the stomach with a kind of geological patience, as if it knows it is in no hurry and has, geologically speaking, all the time in the world. Your foot is a 6. It will be a 6 tomorrow too, probably. And the day after. And the day after that. The water will not cure the gout. Nothing in 1758 will cure the gout. But Bath is doing something that Dr. Chalmers' camphor and bleeding are not doing, which is, it is taking you out of the house. It is putting you in a room with other people who are also in their bodies, and also managing their bodies, and also going through the morning routines and the small humiliations, and the large stubbornness of refusing to let the body be the whole story. This is worth something. Perhaps this is what the water actually contains. Your third glass. The orchestra is playing something, a dance piece, a country dance arrangement, something with the particular lilt of a tune you half know. The sound fills the colonnade and bounces off the pale stone and comes back slightly warmer than it went out. You stand at the counter with your third glass of Bath water. A very large man in a good coat with a cane and a 6-rated foot and a chest that asks to be carefully managed. And you drink your medicine, and outside the Abbey's perpendicular stone face is catching the December morning light. And somewhere in the city your cousin is walking, and the sedan chairs are moving, and the carriages are clattering, and a city full of people who are all, in their various ways, carrying their bodies through another day. You finish the third glass. Not better, but not worse. On the fourth day, when the foot is a 5, genuinely a 5, the best it has been in 2 weeks, something the water may or may not deserve credit for, you tell your cousin you want to walk up Beecham Cliff. She looks at the foot. She looks at the cane. "You're not serious." "I have Cooper with the chair if I need it, but I want to try." Beecham Cliff is not a mountain. It is a hill, steep but manageable, rising on the south side of the city. From the top of it, Bath spreads out below you in its full, extraordinary, organised beauty. The terraces and crescents, in their honeystone, the river Avon curving through the valley, the Abbey's tower rising above the close rooftops, and beyond the city the hills of Somerset and Wiltshire rolling away to the south and west. Your cousin comes with you, unwilling to miss the spectacle of either the view or the attempt. Cooper brings the chair. The path up the cliff begins easily and becomes steep. You use the cane with both hands for a section where the path is rough. Cooper stays close, not pushing but present, because the nature of this arrangement is that the chair is available if needed, and the decision about when needed is yours. The foot is a 5. It stays a 5 for the first third of the climb. The middle third of the climb, the steep part, the part where the path cuts back and forth up the hillside through bare December trees. The foot votes 5.5. You continue. Your lungs on the hill are working. The chest, which is doing its careful work on flat ground, is working harder on the incline. Not the tightness, not that specific pressure that you monitor, but the honest effort of lungs moving more air through a larger body up a gradient. You stop twice. Look back at the city below, which is already revealing itself in stages as you climb, and then you're at the top. Bath below you. No, not below you. That's not the right description. Bath around you, visible on all sides from up here, the city's whole geometry made legible from this height. The sweeping curves of the Royal Crescent, built just 5 years ago, a perfect half-circle of 30 identical houses, arranged with the mathematical confidence of a city that believes in what it is building. The circus, John Wood's 3 arcs of townhouses arranged in a ring, visible as a pattern from above that you cannot see from street level. The abbey, the river, the green hills beyond. All of it in the December light, which in the early afternoon is at its best. Low-angled, warm gold, the specific light of English winter afternoons that compensates for its brevity with a quality that summer never manages. Your foot is a 5. You are breathing hard. Your hands on the cane are gripping with the effort of the climb, the knuckles slightly white. The chest is working. You're aware of the blood, doing its work harder than usual, pressing against the walls of the vessels with the increased effort of the climb. But you are here, at the top. Your cousin is beside you, breathing more easily than you are but saying nothing about it, because she is the kind of woman who understands when not to say things. Worth it, you say. She looks at the view. Yes, she says. You stand there, the city below, the people in the streets, from here barely visible, small figures moving in the patterns of city life, to the pump room, to the shops, to the assembly rooms, a sedan chair crossing the bridge, its carriers stepping quickly, a carriage on the London road, moving south. This body has carried you to the top of this hill, not gracefully, not without the cane and the stops and the 5 rating and the careful monitoring of the chest, not in the way that the 17-year-old you were would have carried himself up this hill, running probably, laughing probably, not thinking about it at all, but here, at the top, with the view, 20 years of living in the body that living produces, 20 years of the good meals and the good wine and the good fires and the good company, and also, always, the body working away in its own parallel story, adding its deposits and its crystals and its tightenings and its reckoning, with the patience and the thoroughness of something that has all the time in the world. 20 years. And here is the view. I'm going to reduce the port, you say. Your cousin looks at you, not surprised exactly. The look of someone who has been waiting for a particular sentence and recognizes it when it arrives. By how much? Significantly. She considers this. Dr. Chalmers has been saying that for 4 years. Dr. Chalmers is, I've decided, broadly correct about the port, wrong about most of the treatment, right about the cause. That's generous of you. I'm a generous man. The December light is sitting on the Royal Crescent below you, the honey stone glowing with it. The city hums with its specific winter life, distant and self-contained. The noise of it reaching the top of the cliff as a murmur, a kind of held breath. Cooper is waiting 20 yards behind, you with the chair, with the specific neutral patience of someone who is very good at waiting. You look at the view for another few minutes. Then, all right, Cooper, he brings the chair. You sit. The descent in the chair is much faster than the ascent on foot. Cooper handles the path with his usual competence. The city comes back up around you as you descend, the perspective closing, the broad geometry of it from above being replaced by the street-level experience of tall buildings and cobbles and the smell of the city, coal smoke and horse and baking bread from a shop on the corner. Normal, human, real. That evening, in your cousin's dining room, there are 5 of them for dinner. You, your cousin, a physician named Dr. Hartley, who is not like Dr. Chalmers in any way that matters, a clergyman who is visiting from Oxford, and a widow, Mrs. Sanderson, who's been in Bath for 2 months and shows no signs of leaving. Dr. Hartley is 40, lean, Edinburgh trained, and has the unusual quality of listening to what people tell him before forming opinions about what they have. He asks about the gout with genuine curiosity. Not performing curiosity, actual interest in the specific experience of the thing. Where does it hurt, he asks. Not where are your symptoms located, where does it hurt? You tell him the first metatarsal joint, the big toe, left foot. He asks about the frequency of attacks, the duration, the triggers you've identified. He asks, and this is the surprising one, whether you have noticed any correlation with particular foods. The organ meats, you say, sweetbreads, kidneys, those seem to worsen it. He nods. He's not writing anything down, but he is filing it. And the port? I've been told it's the port. What do you think? You consider this. The honest answer is yes. The attacks come with notable frequency within 48 hours of a heavy port evening. This correlation is clear enough that you have registered it without quite naming it. I think the port is involved, you say. I believe it is. There are physicians in France. I've been in correspondence with one in Paris, who believe the gout to be connected to something in the blood. Something specific. Not a general plethora, but a particular substance. They can't identify it yet, but the line of thinking is promising. Uric acid. He doesn't have the words for it. No one does yet. But the shape of the idea is there, forming at the edge of 1758's understanding of the body, the way the right answer forms at the edge of consciousness. Present, almost graspable, just not yet named. They also believe, Dr. Hartley says, that the organ meats are a significant contributor. The kidney, the liver, the brain, these are concentrates of whatever the substance is. So the solution is less of those, more of lighter things. Fish, if you can manage it. Vegetables. Less port, perhaps, rather than more of the wine if you're going to drink. Claret, which seems to trouble it less. He says this the way a reasonable man says a reasonable thing, not as a moral instruction, not as a lecture, as information. And the bleeding, you ask? He's quiet for a moment, diplomatic. Bleeding, he says, relieves certain pressures. I won't say it does nothing, but I would be cautious about it as a primary treatment for the gout specifically. The evidence is, he chooses the word carefully, not conclusive. Not conclusive. 2 words that contain, in this specific context, a quiet devastation. 4 years of Dr. Chalmers and his lancet, 3 guineas per visit, the white porcelain bowls, the bandaged arm, all of it operating on the wrong theory. Not conclusive. You eat your dinner with the particular deliberateness of a man who's received information that will require time to fully process. The fish, there is a soul, simply prepared, exactly what Dr. Hartley has just described as less problematic, is very good. You drink a glass of claret. 1 glass. The conversation moves on to other things. The war. The American question. Something your cousin knows about a property matter in Bath that has become a local scandal. The clergyman from Oxford has strong opinions about architecture that he expresses with the confidence of a man who has thought about it carefully. You eat and drink and listen. Your foot is a 4. 4. The best it has been since last June. You notice it around the fish course. The absence of the constant underpresence of pain. Not gone. Gout doesn't go, not like this, not in an evening, but reduced. Reduced enough to notice the reduction. 4. 4 is a number that belongs to a different version of this body, a version you've almost forgotten existed. After dinner, walking back to your lodgings, with the cane, because 4 is not complete freedom but moving. The December Bath streets are lit by the occasional torch and lamp, the stone gleaming faintly in the cold air. Your cousin walks beside you. Dr. Hartley, you say. He's good, she says. He's the kind of good that makes Dr. Chalmers seem like what he is. Yes. I'm going to write to him, you say, when I get home. I want his correspondence with the French physician. I want to read what they've found. You won't understand it, she says. It's all in French medical Latin. My Latin is perfectly adequate. Your Latin is excellent. Your medical Latin is a different matter. I'll manage. She smiles. The Bath Street goes past around you. The tall terraces on either side, the dark sky above them with a few stars visible through the cold cleared air, the city quiet now after its day. 43 years old, a 4-rated foot, a glass of claret in the place of the usual port, the beginning of something that might, assembled slowly over time, with the right information, with less organ meat and more fish, and a physician who does not think bleeding is the answer, become a different kind of body. Not the body of 20 years ago. That is not available, but possibly a body that is, on a December evening in Bath, capable of walking back to its lodgings in the dark, with only a cane. The journey home is 3 days, not 2. You take it slowly. The December roads do what December roads do, and there are 2 more potholes of philosophical significance, and 1 section of road outside a village in Wiltshire where the carriage slows to a walking pace for half a mile through mud of a consistency that can only be described as collaborative. Mud with ambitions. But the foot stays at a 4 for most of the journey, touching 5 on the second afternoon, coming back to 4 by evening. This is unusual enough to be notable. You note it. Hewson meets the carriage at the house. The house smells of wood smoke and beeswax and the particular cold stone and plaster smell of it in winter. The same smell it will have had for 100 years and will have for 100 more. The smell of a house that has been waiting. The estate is in order. Whitmore's report is brief. The drainage ditch repairs are finished. The kitchen garden wall has been repointed. The winter barley is looking well. You are home. That evening in the study, the fire going, Hewson has set out the usual things. The small glass of, and here is the decision, the Bath decision, the thing Dr. Hartley said in the dining room with his particular scientific carefulness. The small glass, which is claret. The port decanter is on the sideboard where it has lived for 20 years. You look at it. The port decanter is a beautiful object. Cut crystal, dark with the wine inside it, a stopper of clear crystal that catches the firelight and refracts it into a small spectrum on the wall. 20 years. You pour a small amount of the claret into the glass. Just the claret. This is, by Georgian standards, an unremarkable decision. You're switching from one wine to another. The world is not changed by it. The estate is not changed. Dr. Chalmers will continue to visit on Tuesdays and recommend his bleeding and his camphor and his Dover's powder, and you will have more of the argument with yourself about whether to follow all of it or only some of it. But the claret is there, and the port is where it is, and that is something. You drink the claret. It is honestly not as good as the port. It is lighter, slightly astringent, with a complexity that requires more attention than the port's immediate warmth and sweetness. It is the wine of a different kind of drinking, the drinking of a man who is paying attention, rather than the drinking of a man who is celebrating. Maybe that is appropriate. Fielding is on the chair beside you, Tom Jones. The page you marked before Bath is still there, the slip of paper. You open the book, the fire shifts. The December wind is outside, doing things to the elms and the hedgerows. Inside, the study is warm and quiet and smelling of the claret and the fire and the slightly medicinal ghost of the camphor from the evening's rewrapping. Your foot is a 4, the foot is 4. You read a page, 2 pages. The prose coming back to you with the ease of a familiar thing resumed after absence. Fielding's particular combination of comedy and observation, and the continuous mild suggestion that the world, despite everything, is more funny than tragic. By the 5th page, you are properly inside the book. The fire dims slightly. You don't notice. Outside, the December dark, the frost coming down again on the fields, patient and mineral, doing what December frost does. The rooks settled into the elms, absolutely still. The home farm quiet. The drainage ditch, repaired now, running clear, directing the water away from the Northfields corner with its new corrected channel. Everything in its proper place. You close the book at the end of a chapter and look at the fire. 43 years old, 17 stone, more or less. A foot wrapped in flannel on an ottoman, a glass of claret half drunk, a body that requires daily management and gives a great deal of trouble, and is, in the immediate specifics of this December evening, at 4. A 4. The body that carries the mind that reads the book, that manages the estate, that drinks the claret and plans the trip back to see Dr. Hartley in the spring. That laughed at Lady Bellamy's story and ate the crab and stood at the top of Beechen Cliff and looked at Bath spread out below in the winter light. This body, yours. You close the book. You look at the fire for a long time. Outside, the December wind. Inside, the quiet. Hewson, when he comes to bank the fire and take the glass, finds you already asleep in the chair. He moves very quietly. He takes the book from where it has slipped slightly, holds it for a moment, puts it on the table. He adjusts the rug over your lap with the care of a man who has been doing this for 11 years. He banks the fire. He snuffs the candle on the desk. He leaves the one on the mantel, turned low, for when you wake. He closes the door so softly the latch makes no sound, and you sleep. Not the laudanum sleep of 3 o'clock urgency, the sleep of a body that has done its day. The foot and the blood and the chair and the carriage and the water and the hill and the claret and the book, and has arrived, finally, at this. Rest. The fire throws its low orange light on the walls of the study, the books on the shelves, hundreds of them, the library your father started and that you have continued, English and Latin and French and Greek and the medical correspondence you intend to read, stand in their neat rows, the spines catching the firelight in repeating glints of gold lettering. This room has existed for 100 years. Somewhere in the ledgers there is a note, in your father's hand, about the planting of the elms that are now full grown and standing bare in the December wind outside, the elms he planted and that you have watched your whole life. Your own hand has been in these ledges for 20 years. 20 years. The fire is very low now. Outside, the December dark is absolute. The frost doing its work, and the stars where the clouds have cleared. And they have cleared by midnight, the cold having driven the clouds east. The stars are extraordinary. This is what you cannot see from the city, what Bath with all its honey stone and beautiful architecture does not have, this sky. This particular rural sky, uncontaminated by the coal smoke glow of any city, showing the full population of stars that the English countryside in clear winter weather occasionally reveals. The Milky Way, visible over the south field. The moon, rising late, washing the frost with silver. Everything very still. Your body in the chair, doing its deep maintenance. The heart going at its careful rate, slightly laboured but steady. The lungs moving, the blood circulating, picking up oxygen, distributing it, returning, the joints resting. The foot, wrapped in its flannel, at rest in the way that only sleep permits. The pain that is always there, registered, present, but processed differently in sleep, incorporated differently, allowed to simply exist without being managed. The body does not stop. The body never stops. But in sleep, it does something different from what it does in the managed wakefulness of the day. It repairs what it can repair. It adjusts, it compensates, it tries to correct the imbalances and the deposits and the pressures, not successfully, not perfectly, not in ways that will override 20 years of chemistry, but trying. The body always tries. 300 years from now this house will be gone, the elms long dead, the fields rearranged, the roads paved, the dark absolute sky of December replaced by the orange glow of the world that's coming. The pump room at Bath will still be there, a museum now, its mineral water tested and certified and understood in ways that Dr. Hartley was only beginning to imagine. The word uric acid will be in the dictionary. The word gout will be understood in its specific chemistry, treatable with drugs that have names longer than sentences. But 300 years from now in December, a man will wake at 3 a.m. with something wrong, something in the body, something to be managed. He will call for whoever his Hewson is, the phone, the person asleep beside him, the voice in the device, and he will ask for something that helps, and the thing that helps will be there, because it always has been, and he will lie in the dark and breathe through it, and wait for the pain to become manageable, and it will, because it always does. Some things don't change. The body's insistence on existing, on continuing, on finding its 4-rated evenings in the middle of the 9s, the stubbornness of it, the refusal of the body to make pain the whole story, even when pain is very much present and very much expressing itself. The body keeps its own accounts, and the accounts are complicated, and the balance is never quite what you expect. But here you are, 43 years old, in a study, in December, in the year 1758, in a body that has had 20 years of the best and worst that Georgian life can offer, still here, still reading Fielding, still drinking something by the fire, still watching the crows, still managing the foot to a 4 on good days and breathing through the 9s on bad ones, still here. The fire is almost out now. The room is cooling toward the temperature of the house in winter, which is cool and not cold, the stone holding what heat it has been given during the day and releasing it slowly into the night. You're breathing in the chair, slow, deep, in, out, In, out. Let the foot rest. Let the chest rest. Let the mind, which has been working since 7:30 this morning through the letters and the bailiff and the dinner and fielding and Bath and all of it, let it go. You've done the work. The field is planted. The wall is repointed. The letter is written. The water was drunk. The hill was climbed. The claret was chosen. That's enough. That's more than enough. Let it all go quiet now. The way the November frost goes quiet on the fields when the wind drops and the night settles into itself, settling into its cold, perfect stillness. Like that. The study and the fire that is almost an ember, and the books that are waiting patiently for tomorrow, and the window through which the frost-silver moonlight is just beginning to edge across the floor. Sleep. Long, deep, earned sleep. The body doing its careful work in the dark, holding you, carrying you, managing all the things you don't manage consciously, the heart and the lungs and the blood and the foot and the chest and the 43 years of chemistry and history and decision and consequence that it contains, the body that has taken you here, the body that will take you further, wherever further is, for now, just this, the chair and the fire. December 1758, and rest. Good night.